Hi, Dr. Regan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I am your host, Regan Robertson. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Austin Whetten of Amarillo, Texas. In just a short 2.5 years, Dr. Whetten has massively grown his practice and generated almost 500 five-star Google reviews. He's going to tell you how he did it and how you can achieve the same level of success in your practice, no matter where you're at. If you wish that you could rise above micromanaging, team turnover, and the fatigue that comes with dental practice ownership, you are going to enjoy hearing from Dr. Whetten. Let's dive right in. That really relates to everybody, the stress of doing the hustle, putting it all in, and then having it start to pay off. How long have you been in dentistry?
Well, I graduated from UNLV in 2017.
Okay, so you're fairly new. I mean, I would say fairly new in your journey, 17. So coming up on what, 5 years?
Well, I'll be honest, 2017, UNLV, hated every moment of it, but also loved every moment of it at the same time. It's weird how dental school will kind of do that to you. Then I tried to do an acquisition right out of school. That fell apart. And so I was then forced to be an associate for a while. I built Windmill Dental, my wife and I, as a scratch startup. We opened the doors in October 19. And now we're doing really good, like what we talked about earlier, and we're looking for an associate, and we're doing some different consulting deals, and just trying to now get to where it's less hustle, work, spend every living moment trying to make Windmill Dental a success, and get it to where Windmill Dental is a success. And let's kind of feed off of that a little bit.
Man, I relate to that so well. Being in the startup environment, I've been in a corporate environment throughout my 20 years where it's very established and the goals are very different. And then I've jumped into the hustle of the startup. So I've owned my own company. I've been in startups, multiple startups, and it's a totally different animal. And I think the game becomes really fun when you start to see that work pay off and you feel like you're up leveling. Dr. Bruce loves gamification. Anytime he can make a game of something, he's all for it. And that mindset, I see that in a lot of entrepreneurs. How can I make this fun even though it's hard?
You know, it's so funny, Reagan, because I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was telling her how I think there's two types of people. I think there's one group that they always think they know best, right? Nothing is good enough. They tinker here, they tinker there, they reinvent the wheel. They're always got to be thinking and stressing about something and taking risks. And then there's another group that they research to nauseam. They need somebody who's done it before them, somebody to guide them, maybe take the risks together as a group. Proven systems, that's where I'll follow those. I think both people can be successful, right? I mean, we've seen models where both are practice owners, both are incredibly successful. But that tinker type has a really high ceiling and a super deep floor. and me doing a startup, I think I'm that ideal tinker personality where it was scratch everything. I was taking this idea, PDA ideas, stressing myself out to the max, micromanaging everything. My initial staff hated me without a doubt. Bruce talks about that all the time, how he was a terrible boss. And I relate to that, not because I felt like I was mean, but I was just so watching every word that was said. He gives one example where he heard like laughing in the hallway.
Yes.
Well, I didn't get mad at laughing in the hallway, but I would hear that laughing or doing something like that and be like, well, does the patient like that laughing? And then I kind of think about it, and then, you'd formulate thoughts and go coach that. So that was me. And then also when we first started, I did everything. There was 2 other team members and they were fantastic, but I was the dentist. I was the hygienist. I broke down rooms, set up rooms, called, scheduled patients, did insurance verification, insurance payments. I mean, everything. So micromanaging was just a part of it because I had a hand in every single aspect of the practice. I don't know what team meeting it was, but we had a team meeting where a team member said, keep Dr. Whetten busy, because if he's not with a patient, he will start micromanaging. And that's true. Is if I'm not in the back and I'm not doing dentistry, I'm probably going to be up in the front and talking about how this is how we could perfect the checkout process, or I might be with my assistants and saying, let's go ahead and scan each other's mouths and we'll perfect how fast we can do that with the scanner. And so I think that's that tinkering personality that you were kind of talking about, how there's different levels and that's where we're at. So.
What do you think changed your mindset because I understand the need to micromanage and control that. And especially, I almost think it's necessary, especially in a startup environment, to have your hand in everything, like understand from that perspective. It helps you relate to your team better. It helps you understand it. And then the other side of that coin is you have a certain way that you've done these things. So therefore you expect them done that way. For you, what changed your perspective from going towards the micromanaging side to instead empowering your team and trusting your team so that you could relieve some of that stress from yourself?
Oh, I think that last comment you made about relieving stress from yourself is probably the biggest. And another thing that will really hit hard for anybody who is doing an acquisition or a startup, and when you start losing staff members, and those relationships with them just kind of like disintegrate. And it's really weird because you feel like they're real strong. And then they just start to kind of fall apart. You start thinking about ways, how could I have done this better? And then another great thing is I went to PDA real early. Let's see, it was months. It was the February before the October that we opened our doors. And so I took a lot of those aspects from PDA, and so I could start that day one. But I didn't have a team or anything like that. And I definitely didn't have a schedule that could be productive scheduling. But our hours, like they are now, was 7 to 7. So we'd have 5 patients show up, and out of those 5, on 2 of them, in addition to the exam and the cleaning and all that kind of stuff, we knock out an entire quad, right? Crowns, fillings, extractions, stuff like that. And that's because of PDA. I knew to look for that. I knew to convince the patient. It's easier to get numb now. I'd say things like, I know you don't like to go to the dentist, so let's not make it to where you have to. You're already here. Let's just go ahead and finish everything, stuff like that. Well, now fast forward 5 years later, and you're asking a question about how did I stop being micromanaging? I went to PDA again, and I took my whole team and just let's empower everybody. Now we're taking different aspects from that conference. And instead of being productive, just myself as a doctor, now let's be productive as a whole team. And I think that's kind of the biggest switch. Is if I always wanted to ease into that, but I haven't been able to, because my practice hasn't been to the point that it's allowed it to where it's allowed me to step back. And now I have a team that can feed off it a little bit.
I love how you've shared that this is a journey that has taken a few years. And I know from myself, especially with my own entrepreneurial spirit, I want things to happen right now.
No,
And I know that it's a process, and boy, is it frustrating. I think I take up personally a lot of mind power being frustrated at my own ignorance and being like, if I just could figure out this piece or this piece or this piece. And I think it's actually, of all of that, one of the biggest gems is understanding it's a process, and being forgiving to yourself along the way is massive to that. And let's break down what it is specifically at these workshops at PDA. What are some of the things that you felt you've really taken away that we could share with listeners? So if they're in the same spot where you were a few years ago and they're losing team members, they're working too hard, and they're getting a little exhausted.
Well, I think the first thing is obviously PDA has a ton of stuff that you can gather from it. Okay. I mean, it would take the whole podcast to really break down everything that I myself have gathered from there. And even right now, I'm even using them as consultant. So a lot of those things I'm going to have help kind of pushing forward and instituting. But I would say that it's got to be that desire. You've got to have that desire. You can go to PDA and you can get all that information, but unless you actually have that desire to work hard to strive to make it better, then it's not going to do anything. It's going to pump you up for a week, and then you're going to be right back in that same position you are. So,
you were talking about the hustle and the drive and the wanting. Tell me more about that urge. Do you think it's just intuitive to you? Like you just pick it up naturally? Some people have it, some people don't.
That's a really good question. Let's see. Dentistry as a kid meant nothing to me.
Really?
Meant nothing. Except it just seemed like they always had a nice stuff. They had a nice house, cars, spoiled kids. But other than that, it meant nothing. I grew up and I wasn't prepared like some of my classmates in dental school. Nobody in my family's a dentist. We're all agriculture. We're all ranchers. I remember even in undergrad, Reagan, that I was trying to get a job at the mall, like all the cool kids do. But my resume was definitely not going to allow me to get that job at the mall. Instead,
why? Wait, ranchers, the problem solvers, they encounter unique situations.
I
every
wish you were there. I wish you were there to tell Hollister and all those different cool things, Abercrombie and Fitch to hire me. But instead, I got a job shoveling manure at a farm where I also handled the irrigation and stuff like that. So work, I was never afraid to work. Mm-hmm. And like, Reagan, that's a huge part of success, is just having that desire and that ability to go to that point that everybody else is going to work and then go a little bit farther. So like dental school, I wasn't prepared for dental school. I was middle of the pack without a doubt. But because of my past, I was ready to be a dentist. I was ready to have a career because I was raised to work. Mm-hmm. And I know it's not glamorous to talk about. Now, Reagan, you probably hear this all the time too. I know Chad would probably hear this every time he goes to a different CE. But you're not going to hear the dentist go up and brag about himself, saying things like, I did okay. I collected 1.5 as a solo doc, working my butt off, stressing to the absolute max most of the year. Now that I think of it, I did take 3 days off to relax, but that even stressed me out more because now I'm behind. You're not going to hear that. That dentist is going to say stuff like, oh, as a solo doctor, I practiced 3 days a week and produced 1.5, right?
Yep.
The work is always left out of it. And I think that's the biggest thing is the work is huge. And I think that has to actually be instilled in you as a child, or something has to have developed to where you can work, like we talked about, work to that point that everybody else is going to work to, and then push yourself a little bit farther so you do excel even farther. I don't know, Reagan, this might be a boring story, so I'll just go on with it. But I'm a cowboy turned dentist.
I was going to ask you, why did you become a dentist if ranching is in your family? I mean, it's so common to follow in your family's footsteps.
Right. Yeah.
So what led you down the dental path instead?
So as a cowboy turning dentist, well, now I'm bordering as being a city boy, sadly, because I've been a dentist now for however many years. But I grew up on my family's ranch. It's about 500,000 acres, beef cattle, riding, branding, fixing windmills from the age 5. It was a childhood that, of course, produced a good adult, but it was a hard childhood. We had 2 ranch hands always. And my dad, he would always tell my brother and I that we had to work harder than them. If they were required to be outside in the morning at 7, we needed to be outside at 6:30. And we were. Every morning, my dad would come into our room, he'd turn on that light, and he'd say once, "Get up, boys." And then he'd walk out. And he was going outside at 6. And at that time, I hated it.
Of course you did. Why wouldn't you? And he was forcing you to model the way as a leader.
He was, because that's a lesson that I even now use, especially as a boss. You don't want to ask your team to do something that you're not willing to do yourself or have or is willing to do now. You got to lead by example. And that was what that was teaching us. My mom, a story about her is we went to school 55 miles away from the ranch. I mean, that was the closest town. So she would drive every morning 55 miles, drop us off at school, then go back home, work. And then at the end of the school, she would drive back up to the school, pick us up, and drive us back home. And the whole time during the drive, she would make us read out loud books. Just because we didn't want to waste any time. There's no time that's wasted. Again,
your parents sound amazing.
They really are. You know, they did a really, really good job. So, but these stories, they sound unique, but I'm sure, Regan, both you and Chad have these exact same stories that shaped you because you're both very successful. It's kind of the reason why, for no particular reason, I guess, my kids are outside right now, 3 feet inside a hole, digging it. And, once this interview is over, they'll be instructed to fill it back in.
A pro mud parent. I call myself a pro mud parent. Get them in the mud, get them outside.
Get them digging, get them working for no particular reason. Just have them work to do something. Dig that hole, fill it back in. But that's kind of the thing is we worked really hard but it was all for a purpose. You could tell that they were raising adults. And so that was good.
They seemed very clear in their mission, but you didn't answer the question.
Oh, yeah.
Why dentistry?
I don't know. There was another deal where my dad had told me and my brother one day, he said, this ranch is the family's, but this ranch is your mom and I's. You and your brother, you will have to find a career. And then after you find a career, you can come back, but you need to find a career of your own. And maybe it relates back to what we talked about earlier, where dentistry meant nothing, but they always seemed to have a nice house. And so dentistry seemed like a good fit. And I'm glad I did, because the short attention span that I have, dentistry is great. There's a cavity, you fix the cavity, the end, it's success, next patient. So
everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Well, you've clearly done a good job. So how many years have you been with Windmill, like with your own practice?
Well, since we started in 19 or the end of 19, so about 2.5 years.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So you have almost 500 5-star Google reviews.
Yeah, 500 Google or 5-star Google reviews.
5-star. That's insane. Yeah. And that tells me that you're clearly running a practice that's mission forward. I mean, you must be telling the story of your family and how you were raised. Makes a lot of sense to me. So without knowing you, really, that tells me that you must be very clear with your team. You must have your eye on the prize. Do you do your daily huddles? You must do your morning huddles. You must be consistent.
We do our morning huddles. Yeah. We do our morning huddles.
So listeners listening to this, I want you to take into account right now, just close your eyes with me, wherever you're at in your practice, whether you've been in 15 years or 2 years, success can be defined, because success doesn't have to necessarily be a 10-year stretch. You can get there fairly quickly as long as you're clear on your goal and you're willing to put in that little extra effort. I am so excited that you found not just PDA, but whatever resources you've taken into account to help your team with this journey. So what's next for you? Where are you looking to go next in your exciting adventure? So do you have acreage now? Do you have what do you do on your normal time?
Oh, you're talking about away from Windmill Dental?
Yeah, away from the dental practice.
I don't know what that exists yet, but no. Away from Windmill Dental, it's just about spending time with my family. It's totally being a soccer dad where I'm coaching the teams. It's working outside just to get the kids outside and playing. It's family time. So that's away from Windmill Dental. Mm-hmm. Now at Windmill Dental, we're definitely hoping to bring on an associate here as quick as possible. When we get that good candidate, they are going to be in the door. Increase our office open times. Right now we're doing 3 days a week, but we're hoping to have it open almost every day a week kind of thing, and just keep growing like that.
So you've invested in yourself, and you've also invested in your team by bringing them to the PDA, the productivity workshop. After you got back from the workshop, did you notice a difference with your team? Have you noticed improvement or refinement or anything like that?
Yeah. CE is great, Reagan, because of that particular reason. Is because before CE, you can start to get a little bit bogged down. You can get it to where you start to smile when that last patient of the day cancels, and you're like, oh, get to go home early.
Your honesty is very good.
Right. You stop doing as much same day treatment. That kind of stuff is easy. And I think it circulates throughout the entire team. Everybody starts feeling that a little bit. So what's great about CE is it instantly, it just gives you like a shot of adrenaline and it pumps you up again. And so I don't know if it's what's being taught, which at PDA, of course, it's got a lot of great material. So that's helping. But it's just the fact of being around other people that are in the dental field, and they're sharing their stories and you're getting yours. And maybe your ego's kicking in a little bit and you're like, you know what, I could do better than them. And I think the whole team feels that. So when everyone came back, we're just pumped and we're just ready to rock. And so a lot of the systems are really easy to implement because everyone's wanting to implement them. So I would say that right there, Reagan, if it's not PDA, which it should be, if it's another CE event, think about taking at least a couple members of your team, if not your whole team, because that's probably going to do the best is getting the whole team pumped and ready to go.
That's the piece that I want to preach over and over again. It's the looking for success in your team. It's the helping your team grow. And I know that when you're first starting out, or even if you're a few years in, it can be so hard because of a lack of confidence in my own or your own or whoever, their own abilities. So they work on perfecting themselves. And I feel like it's so common to leave the team behind.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think another aspect of it is the unknown. Mm-hmm. You think about, well, do I want to invest this much money in my team? Because you get gun shy because you have team members that leave you. And you're like, well, I invested this much in them, and do I want to continue to invest because I just lost that money? But at the same avenue, you have to invest in them, or they're going to leave because they got burnt out, because it was boring, it was mundane, and you've just got to keep growing. And they've got to see that their boss or their owner, their dentist, cares about them and wants them to succeed too. And hopefully I'm able to instill that here at Windmill Dental, because I do care about the team, and I really, really hope that they care about Windmill Dental. So
how many team members do you have?
7.
Oh, that's a good size. That's a very nice size. Do you sit down with them individually and kind of talk about what their own growth goals are, or think how they want to grow their career?
Now, grow their career. That's a good question. I'd hope that if I ever asked, I think I'd be scared, Reagan, to ask that question. I say, how do you want to grow your career? And they say, well, I want to be a cosmetologist.
How can
No.
we bring in a spa-like
Yeah.
experience to Windmill Dental?
No, but grow your career in the sense of Windmill Dental. Yes, if we can kind of navigate through that, but definitely taking them out to eat just one-on-one or just the front desk or just the hygienist or something like that. But yeah, I'm hoping, especially since we don't have an office manager right now, and I'm kind of holding that hat a little bit, that we can build a good relationship.
So you have identified your next goal. You don't have an office manager per se right now, other than yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
My mom's career was dental assisting, and that's my only tie to dentistry. That, and I have a freakish love of teeth, I guess I would say, which I'm so disappointed that wasn't your drive to become a dentist. But my mom was a dental assistant, and she has told me for all of my 43 years, she has said how much pride it gave her to be able to anticipate what the doctor needed and to have it ready to go. And she really worked hard to perfect that relationship between her and the doctor so that she could anticipate and make his role easier. And for her, that was growth. And that sort of like dedication and passion to your role, that needs to be respected and celebrated. And I feel that so many times, especially in business ownership, we get caught up and we forget in the honor in each role and how it's like a really important puzzle piece to the patient experience. So growth in and of itself doesn't have to be to another job title, to another area. It can be simply perfecting the role that you're at. And it is unbeatable. I mean, your team got to be with Summer Carroll, which was Dr. Bruce's assistant for 20 years. And I think she's done she's like, I think of her as like a superwoman of assisting. She's so far beyond what I consider a dental assistant. She amazes me, but that's what's possible. And giving people that hope that they can get there to that place, that comes from exceptional leadership. That comes from ownership that's willing to dig deeper. So I'm celebrating you, Dr. Whetten, for really digging deep and taking the wherewithal and just really being brave and leading that and growing your team.
Well, if I had to give advice, Reagan, to somebody who was wanting to excel in dentistry, because I don't know anything else, I would say, one, just like you said, you got to have a team member that you have a really good relationship, like Bruce has with Summer. Someone that you want to excel and somebody that wants you to excel. I got really lucky. A dental assistant that I was with, that my associate SIP, I was able to bring her all the way from Abilene, Texas to Amarillo.
You sneaky.
And it has really, really blossomed since she got here. Now, obviously, because I am talking about advice, now I'll get on my soapbox. I would say the other really, really big portion is you have to have a significant other that supports the holy heck out of you. We know, Reagan, that life is going to reality check you. You don't need more of that. My wife is amazing. When I slightly was thinking of doing a startup after multiple failed attempts at acquisition, she pushed me into it.
Yeah.
Any crazy business idea, she's all behind it. CE, go for it. Huge expenditure for the practice, here's the checkbook. I feel when I'm around her that I'm the best darn dentist, and I'm an incredible business owner. That's huge. Okay, life's going to get you down, like we said, but you need somebody that every day tells you how amazing you are and keeps that confidence high and supports your decisions. So I'm sure this isn't some wild thing, Reagan. I'm sure it's the same with you, that you don't go to your husband with a serious idea and think it's going to fail. Weirdly enough, most of us don't want to disappoint our significant other. It's actually very similar to when I was in high school. I want to impress my wife. Now it's just with business stuff versus silly stuff like sports and subwoofers or, something silly like that.
Nothing funny. There's nothing funny about a subwoofer. We'll get
That's
on.
right.
Well, that's another discussion.
That's right. When you're outside and those cars pass, and
that's right.
Now used to be like, oh, I used to like that for some reason.
I still do. Victoria Peterson, yeah, she's always said that success requires support, and it is important to have support around you personally and professionally. I couldn't relate to you more. I think it's very important to have someone who believes in you kind of unconditionally almost, because that helps give us our lift and our chance to be brave, like you said. That said, if you don't have someone around you, you can be your own hype man. And I think that's just as important. Yeah. You have to believe in yourself. You have to, nobody is successful really, especially entrepreneurially, unless you believe in yourself and are surrounding yourself with the right support. So this has been an incredible episode. Thank you, Dr. Whetten, for joining us today.
Hey, Regan. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share, or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.